Hello, this is Patrick Riley, Liberty University. Today I'll be talking about George Marsden's book, The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship. I'm at Raccoon Creek State Park in western Pennsylvania, and it's a balmy 32 degrees out. I sent George Marsden an email a while back and told him how much I liked his books. He wrote back the next day, and I knew he would because that's the kind of man that I thought George Marsden would be. For this presentation, I consulted Marsden's The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship in a review by Lonnie D. Cleaver, chair of the Department of Religious Studies at the Southern Methodist University. I also looked at reviews by Charles T. Matthews, the Carol M. Barber Professor of Religious Studies at the University of Virginia, Harold K. Bush Jr., Professor of English at St. Louis University, and James L. Sauer, Eastern University. George Marsden's book, written in 1997, has 6 chapters. Chapter 1 is Why Christian Perspectives Are Not Welcomed. Chapter 2 and 3 are Arguments for Silence, and Christian Scholarship and the Rules of the Academic Game. Chapter 4 is titled What Difference Could It Possibly Make? Chapter 5 and 6 are The Positive Contribution of Theological Context in Building Academic Communities. James Sauer notes that Marsden wrote about, quote, the secular establishment and Protestantism in the Soul of the American University, a previous book, From Protestant Establishment to Established Non-Belief, end quote. He says that Marsden in The Outrageous Ideas of Christian Scholarship, quote, presents a more argumentative critique of the secular establishment's prejudice against Christianity and proposes that secularism live up to its own multicultural beliefs. If variation and diversity can be accepted in terms of gender, class, race, ethnicity, sexuality, and critical methodologies, why can't Christianity be accepted as an alternative worldview? In one of my other classes, I wrote a paper about Wilbur and Orville Wright. The very title of the book was The Bishop's Boys, A Life of Wilbur and Orville Wright. Milton Wright, their father, was a bishop in the Church of the United Brethren in Christ. He had a strong influence on the two boys, and they were raised with Christian values. The men were humble, rarely drank, never gambled, and refused to work on the Sabbath. If Tom Crouch, the author, had not noted this in his book, he would have left out a description of why the Wrights were the way they were. If you did not mention their Christian values, you leave out facts that explain their character. Sauer asks, why is Christianity unacceptable? If you cherry-pick your facts, you are throwing your multiculturalism right out the window. If a scholar does that, in my opinion, that makes them a hypocrite. That old adage about practicing what you preach. Sauer further states, quote, the Christian tradition is not alien to the secularist, but forms part of his historical roots. The secularist is acting both unhistorically and inconsistently when Christianity is eliminated from the discussion of ideas. If subjectivity, relativism, and postmodern subjectivity are readily accepted as grounds from which to develop philosophic systems, then certainly the development of Catholic and Reformed worldviews should be allowed to have their time at the podium, end quote. In a discussion of Chapter 4, Lonnie Cleaver points out that Marsden develops 2 lines of thinking. He states that Marsden, quote, suggests that background beliefs always influence the kinds of issues that interest scholars. And 2, quote, Christian scholars will challenge naturalistic reductionism by insisting that spiritual consideration must be taken into account when exploring historical and human phenomena, end quote. George Marsden warns that if Christians want to have a seat at the table, they must produce scholarship that is worth listening to. It cannot be an ideology that excludes facts, derides reason, and corrupts science. Charles Matthews states, quote, he impresses us with the need for further work. We are all, Christians and non-Christians alike, in Marsden's debt. Marsden's proposal has sparked much debate, end quote. One work he cites as a direct result of Marsden's book is Bruce Kucklick and D.G. Hart's edited volume, Religious Advocacy in American History. I will close with Lonnie Cleaver's last sentence. Cleaver wrote, quote, the real question is whether the secular elitist academy dominated by its own ideological prejudices, is willing to listen to any scholar who professes the Apostles' Creed." End quote. Thank you for listening to this brief presentation of a great book, The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship. And I encourage anyone who enjoys a good read to locate a work by George Marsden. God bless you.